Abu Simbel should have disappeared, not because it was weak and not because it was forgotten, but because the future came for it. A temple carved into a mountain more than 3,000 years ago survived sand, silence, lost empires, and the fall of the gods that once gave it meaning. It survived the disappearance of the world that built it. It survived centuries of desert wind moving across its stone faces. But in the 20th century, Abu Simbel faced something stone could not resist: water. The rising waters of Lake Nasser threatened to swallow one of ancient Egypt's most powerful monuments. And the only way to save it sounded almost impossible: cut the temple apart, move the mountain, then rebuild eternity somewhere else. Today, Abu Simbel looks ancient, silent, and untouched. But that is part of the illusion. The temple the world sees today is standing because human hands interrupted what looked eternal and rebuilt it with extraordinary precision. To understand why this mattered, you have to understand Ramses II. He was not only a ruler, he was a strategist of memory. Ramses understood something that every great empire eventually learns. Power is not only what you command. Power is what people see, what they fear, and what they remember. He understood that power had to be seen before it was obeyed. That is why Abu Simbel was not placed in the desert by accident. It stood near Egypt's southern frontier, where trade, military control, and royal authority all met. Anyone approaching from the south would see the message before hearing a single word. Egypt was here. Ramses was here, and his power was carved into the earth itself. This was not just architecture. It was a warning made permanent. The Great Temple does not simply welcome you. It confronts you. Four seated images of Ramses dominate the facade, each about 20 meters high. They do not move. They do not gesture. They simply sit, staring out across the desert with a calm that feels almost unnatural. And that stillness is the performance. The king appears calm because the monument wants you to believe his authority cannot be challenged. Not merely human, not merely royal, almost divine. Inside, that message becomes even clearer. The temple leads the visitor inward, away from the brightness of the desert and into a controlled world of shadow, stone, and sacred imagery. Ramses placed himself inside the world of the gods. His image appears not as a distant king, but as part of the sacred order. This was theology, politics, and propaganda carved into one mountain. But Abu Simbel was not only the story of Ramses. Beside the Great Temple stands another monument, smaller but not secondary. It was dedicated to Queen Nefertari and the goddess Hathor. And that matters. In ancient royal imagery, queens were not often given this kind of monumental presence. Here, Nefertari is not hidden behind the king. She is not simply a detail in the background. She becomes part of the monument's memory. Her temple completes the message. Together, the two temples formed a royal universe: king, queen, gods, dynasty, frontier, and empire. They were not only monuments, they were memory machines. But Abu Simbel was designed for more than scale. It was designed for effect. The corridor of the Great Temple leads deep into the mountain, toward the sanctuary. On specific days, sunlight enters the temple and reaches the inner statues. For a brief moment, darkness changes. The temple becomes a theater of light. Stone, sun, timing, and sacred image become one experience. This is why Abu Simbel still feels alive. It does not simply show power. It makes power appear timed by the universe. The desert, the cliff, the sun, and the human body all become part of the same performance. Ramses did not build only with stone. He built with distance. He built with fear. He built with light. And he built with time. But every empire ends. The world that created Abu Simbel disappeared. Dynasties passed. Languages changed. Rituals stopped. The gods who once filled the temple with meaning became echoes of another civilization. And still, the statues remained. For centuries, stone seemed enough. Sand could cover it. Time could wear it down. The desert could hide it, reveal it, and hide it again. But Abu Simbel remained. Then modernity arrived. And this time, stone would not be enough. The danger did not come from an ancient enemy. It did not come from an invading army. It did not come from a rival king trying to erase Ramses from memory. It came from progress. The Aswan High Dam promised power, irrigation, and control over the Nile. For modern Egypt, it represented a new future. But progress came with a cost. Lake Nasser began to change the map. As the waters rose, ancient Nubian monuments were suddenly in danger of disappearing beneath the surface. Abu Simbel, built to defeat time, was almost destroyed by the future. The irony was brutal. A monument created to look eternal was about to vanish under modern water. And the world faced a question almost no one knew how to answer. How do you save a temple carved into a mountain? You cannot simply lift it. You cannot simply move it like a statue. And you cannot leave it where it stands if the water is coming. The answer became one of the greatest rescue operations in world heritage. The solution was radical. The temples would be cut into massive blocks, dismantled piece by piece, moved to higher ground, then placed again with surgical precision. Think about what had to be moved. The faces of Ramses, the sacred walls, the inner chambers, the sanctuary, the facade, the mountain itself. Every piece had to be measured. Every block had to be numbered. Every surface had to be protected, transported, and returned to its place. It looked like destruction, but it was preservation, a kind of surgery performed on eternity. To save Abu Simbel, workers first had to break the illusion of permanence. They had to separate what had been carved to look inseparable. They had to take a mountain apart, and then make the world believe it had never moved. The goal was not simply to save stones. The goal was to save the experience. Abu Simbel still had to feel ancient. It still had to command the desert. It still had to pull the eye toward the entrance, into the shadow, and toward the sanctuary. It still had to convince the visitor that this monument belonged exactly where it stood. That is what makes the rescue so extraordinary. This was not merely engineering. It was the rebuilding of meaning. The modern engineers did not only move blocks. They moved atmosphere. They moved orientation. They moved sacred darkness. They moved the feeling of standing before something larger than yourself. Abu Simbel was built to make Ramses look eternal. But eternity failed. Stone could survive empire. Stone could survive silence. Stone could survive the desert, but could not survive the future alone. That is the strange truth of Abu Simbel. It looks untouched because it was completely interrupted. It looks ancient because modern hands rebuilt the illusion. It feels permanent because people refuse to let it disappear. Ramses carved himself into a mountain to defeat time. But in the end, time was not the only enemy. The future almost drowned him, and then the future saved him. Abu Simbel is more than a monument of ancient Egypt. It is a paradox in stone, a temple built by a king who wanted immortality and rescued by a world that decided his shadow should not vanish beneath the water. It was carved to last forever. But forever, it turns out, had to be moved.